Hi everyone, and welcome back to Lemon Dew. I'm Brie, and in today's episode, I'm going to be doing a special. So today's special episode is going to focus on a controversial yet political topic. Now, I understand that I have backtracked a lot regarding my episode on autism representation in media, and honestly it's because I have been dealing with some things in my personal life, mainly pertaining to looking for another job and also a bit of mental health issues here and there. But in terms of what I am going to discuss today, I feel that it's important for me to pretty much get this out there because for me personally, especially as a British citizen, this is an issue that I don't think should be ignored. And what I'm referring to is the digital ID scheme that has been announced as of September last month by our current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer made a speech where he announced that the UK is going to have a new digital ID scheme. And from what I'm recalling, please correct me if I'm wrong, this will be implemented in 2029 by the end of Parliament. Now, according to Starmer, the initial purpose of this digital ID is to combat the issue regarding illegal immigration because, as you know, we do have issues where X amount of illegal immigrants, primarily a certain demographic, have been coming here, crossing the borders to the English Channel via boats. Now, of course, I am not saying that immigration is always bad, but if you are too lenient, which I feel like the government is being, then this causes problems for the citizens that reside in the country, and I will get to this in more detail. So right now I'm on my laptop, which is where I'm recording from, and I'm looking at the digital ID scheme. So this was published on the 26th of September 2025, and I will probably add a link to it as well so that you can read up on it for yourself if you haven't. So in terms of how the digital ID itself will work, and I'm going to read exactly what's written on the Gov.uk site, this will be free. So this free digital ID will be stored securely on your phone, and it will help you prove your identity, including your age and residency status. And this will also streamline access to government services and also uses across the private sector. So besides the issue of combating mass illegal immigration, the digital ID is going to be in your smartphone. So if you think of the NHS app where you have access to your medical records, your history of prescriptions and other medications that were issued to you, all the different types of health-related conditions, and even your NHS number, it will probably be similar to that. So from my understanding, this digital ID, I assume, is going to be an amalgamation of all existing forms of ID, because at the moment we do have a few different forms of physical identification, which include a passport with a unique reference number, a BRP or BMP, if you have one. So that's basically your visa, which again has a unique reference number. You have an NI number, which is also unique to you, your birth certificate, etc. So all these forms of identification are going to be amalgamated into one in order to keep things, let's just say, convenient. Now, of course, where convenience is concerned, people will obviously jump to it because, I mean, if you look at, say, cooking, you have people who don't know how to cook or can't be bothered to cook half the time. So they will use services like Deliveroo or Just Eat in order to get food, because why would you want to spend hours in a kitchen preparing food, cooking it, washing the dishes, when you could just get a takeaway online and have it delivered straight to your door? So, you know, where convenience is concerned, lots of people would be happy with this. But of course, and rightfully so, there are major flaws and there are major concerns. Now, a consultation is going to be made for the public, as per according to the Gov.uk site, and this is to apparently ensure best input. And of course, in certain countries such as Estonia, Denmark, Singapore, Nigeria, India, etc., you have forms of digital ID which have already been implemented. And in China, you have the social credit score. So technically, when you think about it, this scheme is slowly being spread internationally. It's just the government, as well as mainstream media, don't really want you to know too much, because the more you know, the more of a problem it is for them. Now, in terms of the ID itself, not only is it going to be used to streamline access to government services, employers will be able to use this ID to check that you have legal right to work in the country. And as mentioned, there is a consultation in process. So this will obviously change things as the years go by, because of course nothing is finalised and we don't really know what is going to happen in the years to come anyway. So besides improving access to public services and checking right to work, this is apparently supposed to reduce identity fraud by minimising personal details you give out, although I don't really know how that will do that anyway. And then where employment checks are concerned, they will be toughened, especially in relation to the gig economy, because you do have a lot of illegal immigrants who work in that industry. So, I mean, you have employers who will hire them and basically give them cash in hand jobs. And the thing is as well, where employers are concerned, is a lot of them don't even do the paperwork. They just sort of, you know, do whatever they feel like behind the scenes, and they pay these people less than minimum wage, especially because they know they will most likely not question anything. I mean, if you come to a foreign country and you have no idea how the system works and you don't know about your rights as an employee, then of course it's very easy for employers to take advantage of you. And I know this because I worked for a dodgy care provider back in 2021 to 2023, so there you go. Now, in terms of the concerns that people have, let's go through these in detail. So first off, there is no way the digital ID will tackle issues of illegal immigration. And as I've stated, I'm not saying all forms of immigration are bad, because you do have people like my mum or even my aunt that come from their native country and, you know, stay in the UK because they want to carve better lives for themselves. So using my mum and my aunt as examples, they came to the UK from Jamaica. They worked, you know, they pay their taxes, they mind their business, and all they want to do is just get on with their life. And these are the kinds of immigrants that are beneficial, because they will make positive contributions to the country and they will actually seek out opportunities to make their lives easier. So, I mean, if say your native country doesn't have enough job prospects, then you would come to the UK, because that way you could get the opportunity to find yourself a decent paying job that gives you a chance to upskill yourself. And like I said, these are the types of immigrants that you want in any country. People who will respect the culture, respect the land, respect the people, and just get on with their lives without causing problems for themselves or those around them. Now, what people don't want are those who will destroy the land and disrespect the land as well as the people. And of course, you have lots of British citizens who are fed up of this group of individuals, because I mean, when you have criminals who are coming in and doing as they please, people are going to feel unsafe. I mean, for example, and I think I mentioned this a few episodes back, I had a cousin who was unfortunately stabbed to death by somebody who resided in the UK legally. And this is the point I'm trying to make. You have individuals that don't really care about the feelings of others. They will come here and they will instill certain so-called values which are not compatible with the values of the country they reside in. And of course, again, if I say exactly which culture it is, you already know what I know, then, you know, people will say that, oh, I'm being racist or whatever, because I mean, if you call out what it is, then unfortunately people don't like that. Now, where illegal immigration is concerned, one thing that a lot of British citizens do notice is that they have more priority than British citizens. So in a sense, it's like you're being punished for working hard. So, you know, most of your income gets taxed. You don't have much left for yourself because you're handling your personal responsibilities. And on top of that, if you require assistance from the government, you don't really get it, but then you have individuals who get priorities where accommodation or even benefits are concerned, which is very depressing. I mean, my aunt, due to the situation with my cousin being stabbed, for example, is on universal credit, and she has worked since her teens, and she has to jump through hoops just to get a small pittance at times. And it really messes with her mental health because she suffers from stress, she suffers from long-term depression, she even has physical issues in relation to her medical problems, and it's very hard for her to manage day-to-day life. I mean, there are times where myself and my mum have to assist her with doing basic tasks because she has a tendency to forget things very easily. And this is the point. You have people like her who genuinely need help, and half the time they don't get the help they need. Besides the following issues that I've already mentioned, the digital ID is only going to encourage more illegal immigration, because when you think about it, right, there are black markets. I'm pretty sure there are black markets that exist in the world where criminals can not only produce fake documentation, they will go as far as selling it. Either that, or they will steal existing documentation and sell it to other people. So you have people using existing data to purchase, I don't know, drugs or weapons or something. This is already happening. And having a digital ID in place will only make things easier for criminals, because let's face it, criminals nowadays are very tech savvy. Not only can they hack into your devices, you have phones that are stolen almost every fucking day, right? So phones are being stolen on the streets, and there are ways where you can bypass passwords, you can bypass fingerprint or iris scanning. It's very easy when you have the tools. And in terms of what happens if your phone gets stolen, apparently new digital ID details will be issued to you and the old details get revoked. But then where your data is concerned, you need to know exactly what's going to happen. Will the government keep your data on their database or servers? Because I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. And technically, speaking of data, the government does have information about us anyway. I mean, if you apply for benefits here, the government will access your bank details to ensure that you're not committing benefit fraud, because they will need to obviously track how much savings and other capital you have so that they can see whether you qualify for benefits. And on top of that as well, what about individuals who don't even have access to smartphones? Because even though most people do own a smartphone, there are certain groups or demographics that don't have one. You have disabled people that either don't have a smartphone or don't know how to use one. Elderly people are not as tech savvy because they're used to having mass amounts of physical documents or paperwork. Homeless people will not have much form of identification on them anyway because they don't have much to begin with. So the question in regards to these particular demographics is that, will alternatives be provided? Will they have a physical ID? Because then that sort of defeats the point of the digital ID. But even if these people didn't have smartphones, I doubt that a lot of them would comply, because let's face it, it's very concerning to know that your data is going to be handled in such a way, isn't it? Now, in terms of the solution to where mass illegal immigration is concerned, the government really needs to close the borders and at least tighten the, basically what I'm saying here is they need to control the borders even further. So, rather than letting almost everyone into the UK, you need to monitor exactly who intends to come to the country and what their purpose is. Or you just close the borders, because having open borders means that you will have more problems. So, if you think of your house, right, you have a key so that you can lock the door and you can open the door. And on top of that, you also have a latch. You have a digital camera to check that no one you don't know is entering your premises. Because I have a digital camera because unfortunately I had an experience where someone I didn't recognize was sitting at in the chute right next to the front door. And having the camera makes me feel less paranoid, because when I'm at home, I want to feel safe. And obviously, if you have common sense, you wouldn't just let anyone into your home. If the doorbell goes, you would want to make sure that people say who they are and what their purpose is for entering the premises, because I do that. I don't want to let some random person into my home knowing that I could potentially be attacked, especially considering that I'm a woman and I can't really fight anyway. So, my point is, you wouldn't let anyone into your own home without knowing who they are. And what's very funny is you've got lots of mainstream celebrities. They want to house all these illegal immigrants, but they don't actually do that. And let's face it, they never would anyway, because there's no way that a mainstream celebrity would let anyone into their gated community. Because let's face it, a lot of these celebrities and even members of the government live in affluent areas where they have access to security. They have gated communities, as mentioned, which the average working class individual doesn't have anyway. So, all the things they say about welcoming all these illegal immigrants, it's all virtue signaling. They want to make themselves look good and prove that they're anti-racist and they support diversity. And again, I'm not saying diversity is a bad thing. I'm really not. I think the concern that I have in general is certain cultures are really not compatible with Western culture, and I don't think it's right to come into a country and disrespect it. Because if I look at myself, right, when I'm going on holiday even, I make sure that I treat the country I'm in like I treat my own home. I look after it. So, I'm not going to say throw trash on the street. I'm going to put it in the bin. If I'm staying in a hotel or like an Airbnb, I clean it, because that's how I was brought up. And I have these values even now, and I will continue to have these values. So that's the point people are making, is you just need to make sure you respect the values of the country that you're in. And speaking of this digital ID, right, remember, this digital ID is required for certain services. Besides combating mass illegal immigration, you require it to access government or public services in general. And employers are going to use this to make sure you can work in the country legally. So let me make this clear, right? As quoted by the current Prime Minister we have, if you enter the country illegally, you cannot work. And the digital ID is going to be mandatory in order for you to work. So the thing with this, right, is that it starts off very small. So the government will tell you that the digital ID is to ensure safety and to make things more convenient, because as I mentioned earlier, lots of people love convenience. But then as the years go by, you notice this digital ID creeps into every aspect of your life. So if you've watched Black Mirror, right, you might remember season 3, episode 1, entitled Nosedive, in which the world was controlled by devices which allowed individuals to rate their daily interactions with each other. And your rating would determine your socio-economic status. The main character, Lacey, was a woman determined to get a 4.5 because she wanted a discount on a luxury apartment, and she was obsessing so much over ratings. She was playing up this pleasant character in a sickening world with pink pastel shades and duplicitous behavior. And on the day of the wedding, she encountered different mishaps which caused her rating to slip. So on the day of the wedding, certain mishaps happened, her rating slipped, and her true character came out when her eye implants got removed and she was imprisoned, ironically, because she realised she didn't have to play up this character. She could be herself. She could say whatever she felt like with no restrictions. So if you think of Black Mirror and you know, just picture the imagery in your head, you'll understand what I'm saying in regards to the digital ID creeping into your life. Because sooner or later, you will need digital ID for basic necessities. You will need digital ID if you want to rent, let alone buy a house. You will need digital ID to purchase everyday items, let alone sell everyday items. You will probably need digital ID to access your pension if you're of pension age. You will need digital ID to even access your bank, your savings. You will need digital ID to travel. So without this digital ID, you will be denied basic human rights, basic necessities to live and survive. And even though you have existing ID, that will be made obsolete because everything is slowly being digitized. So if you remember the COVID pandemic, you might remember the time where you had to stay locked in because the government said so. Yet they were able to do whatever they pleased because remember, it's one rule for them and another for us. And the thing is you couldn't really go anywhere. And if you were in certain industries like the healthcare industry, you would have been required to get the vaccine because if you didn't, you would lose your job. Even if you had valid concerns, you would lose your job. And I remember, right, in my previous job, I used to have to inform staff they were required to get the vaccine if they wanted to work in care homes. And most didn't want the jab. And honestly, I sympathise with this staff because I don't think it's fair to tell people what to do with their bodies. I don't think it's fair to dictate what type of medication should go in. Because personally, if I'm going to take medication, I want to know I'm 100% sure about it. And I want to do my research so I know what side effects can occur before I take it. Now, the point I'm explaining here is that the government are more or less going to use digital ID to basically track your movements. So, you know, technically it's slowly starting to creep in anyway, but this is just going to make things easier. It's just going to make things easier. And what's ironic as well is I found out about this initiative from independent journalists on YouTube, and the only news source I follow, which is The Canary, because it's an independent news source. I don't like mainstream sources. I really don't. And, you know, looking at everything that's going on, it's very clear that right now we are in a world where we are barely surviving. We exist to work, we're constantly exhausted, and we don't pay attention to certain things that are going on around us. And where free speech is concerned, it's slowly being eroded, because now you get attacked with vitriol if you have opinions that don't align with the majority. And certain words lose context as well. There's no context to anything. People just say, oh, you're racist or whatever. But there's no context. There is none. And in regards to the Labour government as well, my personal opinion regarding the recent general election result is that it's very clear that a lot of people don't use logic when voting in the general election. Now, personally, I feel like voting is picking your poison. You have to try to figure out who is less of a snake in the grass, and there are many snakes in the grass. But the point is, there isn't really a lot of critical thinking that's being used. You have people who are going by emotions, and once a certain political party goes into power, people realise they screwed up. And this is what's happening now. I mean, the way things are looking, it's very obvious that when the next general election happens, a lot of people are most likely going to vote reform. Yes, reform. Now, I'm not going to say I'm going to vote for them. I don't really think I would anyway. But my point is, I do feel there needs to be some sort of change in terms of the political unrest. And there has to be a starting point. There has to be. And I mean, where the current government is concerned, I really feel that there are lots of issues that are being ignored. I mean, look at the grooming gang scandals, where you have government, you have councils, you have police officers, all these people who claim to protect vulnerable individuals being connected to grooming gangs, failing countless victims, young girls who were very vulnerable, young girls who grew up in lower working class households, in dysfunctional families. These girls were ignored. Their concerns were ignored. Evidence was lost. And these poor girls were given every label you could think of. People like Sammy Woodhouse and Sarah Wilson, who are basically activists who unfortunately were victims of the Rotherham grooming gangs, for example. People, girls, women like them who were crucified for something that was never their fault to begin with. I mean, this is an example of a serious issue that hasn't been addressed. And let's not forget crime, you know, people being robbed, people being stabbed. And what's funny is, you know, if you experience these things and you try to defend yourself, you're the one that gets punished. Because let's face it, the police don't do anything. They will arrest you for tweets or something on social media, but they will not protect their citizens because they don't care. And in regards to the updates in relation to the digital ID initiative or digital ID scheme, whatever you want to call it, there was a petition. And I think, if I'm not wrong, in terms of this petition, the government don't really care much about the views of the citizens they claim to, you know, care about or protect, because they're still going to implement this anyway. And I wish this was a dream. I really wish it was. And unfortunately it's not, because this is really happening. There are certain spiritual forces that are at work, and I don't like it. And I feel like right now, not only do we need to improve awareness, we need to unite and make sure that we do everything we can to oppose this initiative, because I feel that what's going to happen is this is going to creep into our daily lives, and it will almost get to a point where we can't even breathe without our movement being tracked. So this is where we are. Now, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I really hope you've taken in as much as you could. And as mentioned, I will be posting the link to the Gov UK site, which has more details about the scheme, in the description. So I will see you soon in the next couple of weeks, where I promise I will finally talk about autism representation in media. But I really wanted to do this because I just wanted to pretty much use my podcast as an opportunity to just, share my thoughts on how I feel about this initiative. I hope you enjoy the rest of your wonderful Sunday, and I will see you in the next few weeks.